At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we are actively pursuing what Lori has laid out in her strategy. Otherwise, we're going to have a bunch of amazing technical capabilities, but not the data or the workforce to bring AI to life.
Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, the intelligence community has a new IT roadmap. IC CIO Dr. Adele Merritt joins the podcast to discuss that and more. It's Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. Here are today's top headlines. The National Institute of Standards and Technology has officially released 3 new encryption standards that are designed to fortify cryptographic protections against future cyberattacks by quantum computers. The finalized standards come roughly 8 years after NIST began efforts to prepare for a not-so-far-off future where quantum computing capabilities can crack current methods of encryption, jeopardizing crucial and sensitive information held by organizations and governments worldwide. Those quantum technologies could appear within a decade, according to a RAND Corporation article cited by NIST in the Tuesday announcement. The new standards provide computer code and instructions for implementing algorithms for general encryption and digital signatures, algorithms that serve as authentication for an array of electronic messages, from emails to credit card transactions. For general encryption, the module lattice-based key encapsulation mechanism is a standard under which small encryption keys can be easily exchanged by parties quickly. Meanwhile, for digital signatures, the model lattice-based digital signature algorithm is the primary standard, and the stateless hash-based digital signature algorithm a secondary line of defense based on different math. NIST encourages system administrators to start integrating them into their systems immediately, because full integration will take time. In other news, nearly 2 years after launching its Bureau Chief Data Officer program, the Department of State is seeing success and aiming to almost quadruple the size of its current cohort. That's according to Farah Khan, Director of Communications, Culture, and Training at the agency's Center for Analytics, who told that to FedScoop in a recent interview. The Bureau CDO or BCDO program officially began in September 2022 as a way to improve its use, governance, and management of data throughout the department. So far, Khan said, it's led to better knowledge sharing and collaboration among bureaus and advanced its efforts on artificial intelligence. Currently, the department has hired 14 people in BCDO roles, accounting for roughly 25% of its bureaus. But more positions are expected to be added. Bureaus will be developing and submitting plans to request additional roles over the next 5 calendar years. The department is aiming for a total of 52 across the department, which would mean having an official in all of the bureaus and major offices. The program sits within the Center for Analytics and is overseen by the department's Chief Data Officer, who is also the Chief AI Officer. According to the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024, which established and expanded the program, its goals are to promote data fluency and data collaboration, increase data analytics use in critical decision-making areas, data integration and standardization, and increase efficiencies in the department. It's time once again to vote for the annual FedScoop 50 Awards. Now in their 13th year, the FedScoop 50 Awards celebrate the outstanding achievements of federal tech leaders across a number of categories and acknowledge their tireless efforts to make a positive impact in the government community and in public service. This year, there are more than 250 nominees up for vote, so cast your vote today at fedscoop.com/fedscoop50/vote. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence earlier this summer released an information technology roadmap for the intelligence community. The roadmap is meant to provide technological foresight to guide the intelligence community to make transformative decisions about the cloud environment, cybersecurity, advanced computing, data analysis, and artificial intelligence, among an array of other information technology issues. Dr. Adele Merritt, CIO for the intelligence community, is the official responsible for seeing that intelligence agencies embrace the new roadmap and vision laid out within it. Merritt joins the podcast now to discuss the near-term and long-term goals for the roadmap, her office's top priorities, how the intelligence community is thinking about AI adoption, and much more. Let's go now to that interview. Dr. Merritt, thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast.
Thank you very much, Billy. Please call me Adele.
I will. I promise. That was the only one. I needed to get it in there. But thanks so much for joining me. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I know that a few months ago, Odie and I issued an IC information technology roadmap to help the IC better embrace new technologies that can, quote, reshape the intelligence process and rapidly deliver valuable intelligence. So, we can direct listeners to that and they can read it for themselves. So I don't want to spend too much time getting directly into what's in there, but I do want to use that as a hook for the conversation to kind of kick things off. And would love to hear how that roadmap is driving investments and sort of giving you different actions that you think the IC needs to take in the near term for its information technology.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to highlight the success that we've had with publishing the roadmap. So the roadmap was created in coordination with all 18 IC elements. And so I'm really proud to say that we got consensus throughout the community, but we didn't get down to the lowest common denominator, right? It wasn't a roadmap that really didn't say much. It will drive where we are going over the next 5 years. And as you mentioned, we're using this as a strategic document to help frame some of the decisions that we need to make, some of the investments that we need to make in order to continue to be postured to provide the best intelligence in the world.
That's great. And so, in the near term or the long term, how is that sort of, guiding the actions that the intelligence community is taking? Where, in what ways is a intelligence agency looking at that roadmap and deciding where to go next?
Making sure that we are continued to create some of the capabilities we need today that we're going to rely on tomorrow. So when you look at the roadmap together, you can't just pick out one section or another and say, I'll do a little bit of this one and a little bit of that one. It has to be done in coordination. And we've tried to be really thoughtful at looking at long-term technologies, right? Everybody's talking about AI. But we need to make investments right now in our cloud infrastructure, in our storage, compute, transport, in order to realize how to keep all that data, make it accessible, move it around the world, have the compute needed to do the great work that's over the horizon with AI. And so this document, as an example with the AI area, will help guide and continue to keep focus on where we need to go. There's other areas on cybersecurity. Zero trust is a big thing that we're talking about. Happy to dive into that. It will be a touchstone as our leaders try to make those difficult decisions on where to spend funds or assign people.
And would you say, there's a number of areas, I think there's 5 different principles or focus areas, I think is the actual term you use in the document. But are those essentially the priorities for the intelligence community in IT moving forward?
They are closely aligned with the priorities that we have. Those 5 areas, that we've called out in coordination will focus on where we need to get to the future. If I'm thinking about the priorities that my office is focused on right now, it is architecting for the future, of which the roadmap is a strong document to help guide us for architecting for the future. I'm also very focused on improving cybersecurity. We know that cyber actors are getting better every day. We know that people are interested in breaking into our networks. And so we have to continually improve our game in cybersecurity. Third priority area for me is empowering the workforce. Without the workforce, this is a bunch of really expensive stuff, a lot of capabilities. And so we need to have the people with the skills in order to make the best use of all of these amazing capabilities we have. And then the 4th priority area that I always focus on is partnerships. We can't do this alone. It's an interconnected world. We rely on our partners, whether it's foreign nations, allies that we are working with around the world, our industry partners who are bringing great capabilities to market that we're able to bring into our environment, our academic partners, making sure that we're growing the workforce of the future. We need to do this in partnership. So those are the 4 priority areas that I'm always thinking about.
That's fantastic. And I think we'll get more into those later in the conversation, particularly around cyber and the workforce. But you did mention AI, which, look, it's the biggest thing in the technology space right now. So how could we not talk about it, right? But I'm sure you're doing a lot, and I noticed a lot within the roadmap. So I'm curious to hear more from you about how you're approaching the adoption of AI across the intelligence community. Maybe in two different ways. What are the opportunities you see? And then what are some of the biggest challenges that you might be, worried about or thinking about as you move forward in that adoption?
So in the roadmap, we do have a focused area on enhancing the mission through data centricity. And this is really a nod to the interplay between the strategies that are coming out of the CIO shop and also coming out of the chief data officer shop, right? So the ICCDO, Lori Wade, has a strategy that came out last year, and it really talked about end-to-end data management, the data centricity, the data acumen that we need for our workforce. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we are actively pursuing what Lori has laid out in her strategy. Otherwise, we're going to have a bunch of amazing technical capabilities, but not the data or the workforce to bring AI to life. And so when I think about the opportunities of AI, it's almost limitless. There's so many amazing capabilities that have been growing over the past decade, right? Everybody thinks that AI just came out last year. I'm a mathematician. We've been doing amazing big data analytics, informatics. There's a rich history to this underlying with the mathematics that the world is now starting to see because it's becoming part of their everyday life. And so there's so much more on the horizon that we can do with large language models, generative AI. It's a really exciting time to be in this area. Some of the challenges is making sure that we are doing this in a way that aligns with our values, our ethics, what we hold dear here in the nation. And so making sure that we have the appropriate frameworks, the guardrails, that we understand what these models are doing, that we appreciate how this is going to fold into our tradecraft. We're really spending a lot of time working with our civil liberties and privacy and transparency officers, in addition to, the typical folks you would think of with amazing research coming out in the research community.
Well, that's really interesting. And actually, you mentioned Lori Wade, the chief data officer for the intelligence community. She was actually on our podcast last year and talked about that strategy. So thanks for mentioning that. And if folks want to hear more about that, they can go back to that episode. But I'm also interested in hearing more about, you mentioned in the opening answer to the first question, the technical infrastructure that underlies all of these things like AI and whatnot. And it makes me think about the IC's adoption of cloud and how it's been a leader in the adoption of cloud through its C2E contract. So would love to hear more about that cloud adoption, what the impacts have been through the C2E contract, if any. Are there key takeaways, or largely could you discuss sort of what the nature of the cloud for the intelligence community looks like today?
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, we have been on a cloud journey for a while. It started almost 10 years ago, where we started with a single cloud provider, and we have now grown to multiple cloud environments. We now have some of the best cloud capabilities on the planet. In fact, we have ATO'd all of our service providers at the classified level. So we're really excited about the opportunity to work in this multiple cloud environment. We are looking at each IC element having a unique mission, and each cloud service provider having some unique capabilities. And so now part of our journey is to align those requirements with the amazing capabilities so we can optimize our cloud environment and not just sink down to the lowest common denominator between all of them.
Very cool. Very interesting. And I know that's been a key thing for the IC over the past several years. So congrats on that movement there. And I'm sure it lends itself in a lot of degrees to the cybersecurity work that you mentioned at the top of the conversation. Obviously, there's this huge push to zero trust, which I'm sure you can talk about as it's in that roadmap. But how would you characterize the IC's cyber efforts to date?
We are working around the clock to make sure that we continue to advance our cybersecurity efforts. Adversaries are also working around the clock because they see the same amazing technologies and capabilities that we do, and they're using them to try and infiltrate our networks in new ways. They're trying to use AI to write malicious code or to fuel their phishing campaigns or their misinformation campaigns. And so we have to continue to be better than the adversary. As a nation, we have amazing cybersecurity capabilities, and we get to partner with some of the leaders in this area, right? The National Security Agency with their cybersecurity directorate and the national manager, they are providing, the leadership of where we should be going to protect our national security systems. You mentioned the C2E contract, CIA, CloudWorks, our cloud service providers. As we continue to move into the cloud, there are some amazing cybersecurity capabilities within the cloud, which we are working to leverage. Also, DIA with our modernization of JWICs. There's a lot of great work happening throughout the intelligence community. The list goes on and on. And in addition, with our industry partners, there are some capabilities that have been critical to defending our networks from adversarial attacks.
And just as a quick follow-up, you mentioned AI and maybe adversaries looking to harness AI for, their bad acting within the cyber landscape. Is there, is that something you're thinking about at all from the IT standpoint of using AI to bolster your cybersecurity?
Absolutely. We can use AI to increase our ability to discover anomalous behavior, to take a lot of the information that might be overwhelming some of the tier 1, tier 2 SOC defenders, help them automate some of this, allow them to really, find the signal in the noise, if you will, so they know where to spend the bulk of their attention, and help, create patterns of life for the network so you can see what is normal and have the anomalous really stand out. There's some great opportunities here to help our cyber defenders.
That's great. As we come to the close of the conversation, I want to sort of close out with the workforce and those partnerships that you mentioned. But let's start with the workforce. It's the final point in that roadmap, and it's sort of described as priming the future workforce to take advantage of tomorrow's capabilities. So how are you thinking about actively doing that so that, those intelligence workers, those intelligence agents are able to do their jobs better by harnessing technology?
We need to make sure that we don't have the same old around the table. What got us here might not get us to the future. And so how do we widen the aperture of those who are in the cyber industry? There is amazing work to be done when we bring cognitive engineers in, when we bring psychologists in, when we bring those who have a different view of what's happening in the cyber landscape and bring them together. It's also important to make sure that we are preparing the next generation with the tools and skills that they need. Hands-on keyboard activity, not just the theoretic. You don't want to have a workforce that can only think about policy and compliance, right? You need to have them understanding how to leverage these new tools, these new systems, these new capabilities that are being brought to market every year. So we continue to look for ways to partner, to bring in training, to upskill, and to make sure that we are communicating with our partners, whether they're in industry or academics, what we are looking for so that they can help us, further down the pipeline so that we have the workforce, we have the tools that we need.
And a final question, I'm sure, you get a lot of people knocking on your door, offering help and things of that nature. But, one of the questions I like to ask, especially as we work with, both sides, those in government and those in industry, and sort of merging and helping them better partner. For those folks who do want to work with the IC and, provide services, how can they be better partners to you?
Thank you very much, Billy, for the question. We do have a lot of people who are asking how to partner with us. We do have organizations within the IC that do external outreach and making sure that our industry partners are getting to the right place so that they can, understand our requirements, that they know where to communicate with us is critically important.
That's fantastic. Well, Adele, Dr. Merritt, it's been a fantastic pleasure to chat with you today, to hear all that's going on in the IC-IT space and, be able to discuss a little bit about your roadmap and your priorities moving forward. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
For more on technology modernization in the intelligence community, visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.